I'd like to return to a point that we were bringing up earlier that is still swirling in my head right now, which is the difficulty it can impose to just identify that somebody is going through trauma, because it's, again, not something that people volunteer, particularly students. And if it can be challenging even for an experienced professional to identify the signs of trauma, I think about how challenging it would be for non-professionals, particularly teachers and administrators in the school setting. And obviously, it's critical for those people to identify signs of trauma in students, because they're often the first identifiers of this and are in the best position to intervene and maybe bring those students to a professional to help them sort through that trauma. Can you give those people who are listening right now, the teachers and admins, any advice on how they can recognize signs of trauma in students?
So what I like to do is not so much recognize the signs of trauma, because that's a little tricky and that puts you in a diagnostic place, but more to make yourself available so that when a child does have something, they know that you're a safe person to come to. When you have a classroom where within the curriculum you're talking about emotions, you're talking about, I like to call it the science of you, right? You're talking about, you know, what do you do when you're really, really mad? What do you do when you're really, really frustrated? How do you handle it when, somebody laughs when you raise your hand and you made a mistake? And that's just sort of part of the conversation. Like, along with whatever you're teaching, you're weaving it into the curriculum, which is something I teach when I do a lot of teacher training. Um, and then you make yourself available for conversations with kids, whether you have a signal system in the classroom. Signal system that I like to use is, I use like a 911, 811, 711 system, which is like 911, perhaps you're raising three fingers, which means like, I need to talk to your teacher immediately about something. 811 is, I need to talk to you at some point during like the morning or during the day at some point. And 711 is, there's something I'd really like to tell you, but it can wait.
Hmm.
The idea is, because let's say you're teaching the cardiovascular system and someone's, grandpa just died of a heart attack and they're really feeling stressed out. If you have that 911 system and they raise three fingers and you come over and you check in, so you have a couple of minutes and then you check in, you're like, what's going on? The kid's like, my grandpa just died of a heart attack and it's making me really uncomfortable to learn about the cardiovascular system. And you have a mechanism for a calm down corner in the classroom, a place where, do you need a moment? What do you need? That really builds fortitude in kids. Because then the kid, sometimes it's just, I just need you to acknowledge it. I just need you to know that I'm uncomfortable about this. Like, if I stare out the window, I'm not spacing out. I am thinking of grandpa instead of the science lesson, right? So just that little moment of becoming available for the child, and it can be as simple as that, can already, because the thing about kids is they do want to talk and they do want connection, right? The other side of that is, children often communicate with behavior. So if you look at every behavior as communication, as opposed to like, this kid is so disruptive, what is this kid trying to tell me with his disruption? And maybe what he's telling me is he doesn't have the skill to sit still. Maybe he's telling me that he needs some help with like neurodiversity, but maybe he's telling me something about how he's feeling about, an interaction that happened at lunchtime. And if I'm coming to it from that place of, what do you need to communicate with me right now? Disciplinary incidents go down, the kids feel heard, and it's just so simple because you just wove it into the curriculum. It's not like you're teaching it like daily and hitting them over the head with it. It's just sort of part of the structure of the classroom.
Well, that's always music to a teacher's ears, right? Because so many times when experts come in to help them with something, either in terms of curricular work or co-curricular, or helping helping teachers help students address psychological issues. So often we give teachers one more thing that they have to do, one more assignment, one more task, one more box to check. And so, to the extent that we can help teachers intervene in a way that already fits seamlessly in what they're doing all of the time, that makes things so much easier. So, I mean, certainly what you're bringing up there is going to be pretty valuable and welcomed by teachers.
Yeah, I feel like I, recently was working with a school where the principal was very like back to basics, like reading, writing, arithmetic. That's what we that kind of, school. And he gave me one fifth grade classroom to work with because the teacher was really pushing and some of the parents were really pushing for it. And the amount of conflict resolution those kids learned, and the amount of engagement and disciplinary incidents that went down, he was sold. He was like, I want this in the whole school. Like, what did you do? And it was really as simple as giving the kids a mechanism for, all right, we had a conflict. How do we resolve conflicts? Let's remember, right? The problem is not you versus me. The problem is you and me versus the problem. One basketball court, two groups of kids who want to use it. How do we figure that out, right? Like, this is a problem. It's not that I'm so mad at you because you're such a big shot because you're taking over the court and you hog it all the time. That's not what the problem is here. Inadequate resources is a problem. How do we solve inadequate resources? And then that becomes a lesson in economics, right? That becomes like it just interweaves into the curriculum in such a masterful way when you have a good teacher who can do that. And the kids feel heard. And what was turning into like days and days and days of everybody focus. Why do I see notes being passed? Why are you kids shooting daggers at each other instead of doing math? Became like, oh, we know how to resolve conflicts. We have a step-by-step solution. It's not like things became perfect, but the kids felt such ownership and such like competence, like, oh, this is a skill I've learned. Like, I know how to multiply. I know how to solve conflicts.